What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to be taking a look at some new Keyforge cards. Just a little while ago, we had a little bit of a look at some new Sanctum cards, many of which were incredibly exciting. But we also had some discards revealed in the article that went up on the Fantasy Flight website today, which incidentally should not surprise you because, well, Dis and Sanctum, they're kind of opposite to each other, aren't they? They're kind of the demons and the religious order that we're not supposed to call religious. Let's call them knights. But come on, they're clearly some kind of religious order. So, point being, we need to talk about some new discards. So, let's start off having a little bit of a look at some Yerks. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Yerks. We've got 3 Yerks, as it turns out. But they're all rather similar. None of them have any armor, and they get progressively more and more powerful as you go up. Yerk, 4 power. Old Yerk, 5 power. Ancient Yerk, 6 power. Interestingly enough, they also go common, uncommon, rare, so essentially when it comes to Yerks, the older the better. Like a fine wine, Yerks get better with age. But it's not just the power that increases, it is how good the ability is. So they all have a playability, and Yerk, when you play it, you choose and discard a card from your hand. Old Yerk, choose and discard 2 cards from your hand. Ancient Yerk, choose and discard 3 cards from your hand. Now I say progressively better, that might not be true, because unfortunately it does not say up to. And the lack of the words up to is incredibly important here. Because you see, if it said up to, then you would be able to discard 0, 1, or 2. But because it says discard 2 cards for Old Yerk and 3 cards for Ancient Yerk, you have got to discard those cards. Which means if you don't want to discard 3 cards from your hand, if you don't have 3 cards in hand that you want to discard, you probably shouldn't play Ancient Yerk. Because you don't get no choice, ladies and gentlemen. You don't get no choice. So that can be bad. So why are these cards even good? Why is discarding cards from your hand good? And the reason is, well, because of the basic rules of the game. The basic rules of the game say that during your turn, you must choose an active house. At the beginning of your turn, in fact. And then during your turn, there's no paying like there is in other card games. You can play or use any card from the active house. But you can also discard cards from the active house from your hand. You cannot discard cards from your hand that are not from the active house. Now this becomes incredibly good when you've got a bunch of other house cards in your hand. Because at the end of your turn, you draw until you've got 6 cards in hand. So what you really want to do here is just burn a couple of cards that you don't want. I mean, okay, let's use an example. Let's say you're playing, it's got to be Dis. So let's say you're playing Dis, Mars, and Logos. Often the 3 houses I'm looking for when I'm trying to find a deck. When I'm opening a deck, they're often the 3 I want to see. Yes, I know how good Shadows is. Shh. So, if I'm rocking with those 3 houses, I am in my Dis turn at the moment, and let's say I've got 3 Logos cards in hand, but I've got a bunch of good Mars cards on the field, and I want to use Mars next turn, but I've got no Mars cards in hand. I might play out my 3 discards, which means I'm drawing 3 cards, and hopefully some of them will be Mars. But if I can discard my 3 Logos cards as well, then I'm ending a turn with 0 cards in hand, rather than 3. I'm drawing 6 cards, rather than 3. So the chance of me drawing some Mars cards to play next turn, much higher. Twice as high, in fact. It means that you can empty your hand out more, because a lot of the time you know what house you want to use next turn. It's not just about the cards that are in your hand, it's about the artifacts and creatures that you've got on the board. This allows you to go, right, I know what house I want to go for, so I'm going to try and get my hand down as small as possible, so I can draw as many cards as I want, so that I can then potentially have a stronger turn next turn with the house I actually want to choose. Now, I'm not saying this is the only use for it. Sometimes it's good to, let's take a rise as an example. So a rise lets you basically recover all the creatures from a particular house. So one option you've got is to bin a bunch of creatures from one house that you don't intend choosing next turn, so that in a future turn you can play a rise and just get them all back in one go, but they're not clogging up your hand now. But most of the time it's going to be emptying out your hand. So that kind of leads us into an interesting decision, an interesting calculation as to which one of these we actually want. Because on the one hand, Yerk is the weakest of them, it's a 4 power, and also Yerk only lets us discard one card from our hand. But we might only want to discard one card from our hand. But then if we want to discard 2, we go Old Yerk, and 3, we go Ancient Yerk. And the reality of it is this. It is going to depend on the game, the turn, the hand you've got, as to which of these is going to be better. But make no mistake about it, being able to discard cards from your hand that are not of the active house, that's big. Incidentally, you can use this to discard cards that are of the active house. And do get the sequencing right. Please don't be that person that discards 2 cards from the active house and then goes and plays an Ancient Yerk and has to discard 2 cards they'd rather not from another house. You can play this at the beginning and discard cards you were just going to discard anyway. So I like the Yerks. As weird as they are, I think they're kind of cool. But we did have another card revealed today, and it's Onyx Night. And if the whole night motif sounds familiar, it should. More on that in a moment. So it is a 4 power creature with no armor, and when you play it, you may destroy each creature that has an odd power. And again, if that sounds familiar, it probably should, because just earlier today, literally like an hour or 2 ago, I showed you Opal Knight. An Opal Knight is a 5 power creature with no armor, so it is a little bit more powerful. But Sanctum generally is more powerful than Dis in terms of raw power. And you get to destroy each creature with even power. And what was really cool, they did pop on the website, Fantasy Flight Games, this little piece of artwork showing the 2 going against each other. Basically, it's the artwork from both the cards kind of put together into a really nice piece of artwork with them coming up against each other. Although I hate to break it to them, but Onyx Knight's a 4 power, Opal Knight's a 5 power. Onyx Night gets destroyed, Opal Knight survives with 1 power. Unless there's some upgrade stuff going on, Opal Knight's winning that fight. Is this a good card? I mean, look, my opinion of this is exactly the same as my opinion of Opal Knight was in the earlier video. It's good if you're playing a bunch of creatures that have got odd power. And it's rubbish if you're playing a bunch of creatures with even power. Now, the thing that must be pointed out here, and it's why they don't have the same power, incidentally, it says each creature, not each friendly creature, and I probably didn't make enough of a deal about this when I talked about Opal Knight earlier, so let me make enough of a deal when I talk about it now. This could bite you. This could end up being a very bad thing. This could go very, very wrong. Because the fact is, you're destroying your own creatures here. There are going to be decks, and look, there's going to be so many thousands of decks, it's going to happen. There are going to be decks where you pull an Onyx Night, and every single other creature in your entire deck has an odd power. That's going to happen. It has to happen. Statistically, that's got to happen to at least one person, probably several. But then there's going to be decks where none of them are. But the fact of the matter is, it's a playability. You don't have to play this card. You can discard it from your hand without playing it. And that's the decision you're going to be making. Because there are going to be plenty of games where you discard this because you cannot afford to drop it for fear of what it will do to your own board. And there will be plenty of games where you drop this and absolutely wreck. So like so many cards in Keyforge, it's all about the situation. Either way, I feel very comfortable this is a good and interesting card. And I do like the little pair of cards, that's kind of cool. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the new disc cards we had revealed today. So tell me what you think about them in the comment section. Go nuts! But please do remember the rule. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk about games. Like Keyforge, but there are some others as well. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.